Hey, Exotical Barbie dolls. Welcome to A Day in the Life of a Light Skin, episode 3. So, in this episode, I want to talk about Sanaa Lathan and how she referred to herself as a red bone and how some people got upset about that. Another person who actually referred to herself as a red bone initially was Meg the Stallion, believe it or not. So it's funny because if you are not dark skinned, once again, you are not allowed to come up with any nicknames for your skin tone. You're not allowed to use the forbidden nicknames. You're not allowed to use the L word, light skinned. You're not allowed to use the Y word, yellow bone. And you're not allowed to say red bone. And actually, now that I think of it, remember when Danny Lay called herself a yellow bone and people were like, you're not even a yellow bone. You're not even light skinned because you're not black enough to be light skinned. So I see people going back and forth with Doja Cat about that as well, like saying, oh, first it was she was too dark to be light skinned, and then afterwards it was, oh no, you can't be light skinned because light skinned is only for people who have two black parents and they're basically monoracial or they have low admixture, but they happen to have a lighter skin tone. Okay, so then by that logic, Meg the Stallion would be light skinned then. So, but then they argue with Meg the Stallion and then they try to make the same talking point. No, you're too dark to be light skinned. A light skin is a person who has to be lighter than Meg the Stallion. Okay, fine, Sanaa Lathan. And then suddenly it's, oh no, same argument. You're too dark to be light skinned. So do you see the mental gymnastics where like they keep picking and choosing and constantly moving the goalpost of what's light skin, what's not light skin, what's too dark to be light skin? My thing is, it's very easy to know what your skin tone is. All you have to do is go to a makeup counter, look at the name of your foundation shade, look at the undertones on that foundation shade. If it says, tan undertones, caramel undertones, or things like that, then it's obvious that you're light skinned. If you have never experienced colorism as in being too dark skinned, or like, you know how on the colorism channels, a lot of the women, they talk about how guys will reject them and stuff for like, being too dark skinned, or they'll say, I don't like you because I only like dark skin, or I only like light skinned girls. I personally have never been told that ever in my life. I've never heard that ever in my life. So that's how I know that I'm obviously not dark skinned. My actual life experiences and my traumas do not line up with a dark skinned unambiguous woman. But you know what? My experiences and my traumas do line up with a light skinned woman. So that's how I know exactly what my skin tone is. That and plus my makeup shade. It's very simple. So this is why I feel like there is no need to identity police, because there's always someone lighter than you, there's always someone darker than you. I can't argue with somebody's experiences. If a person, depending on where they're from or whatever, if you've always been called light skinned your whole life and you happen to be from a different city than me, I can't argue with that. I'm not from your city. I didn't grow up with you. I didn't grow up as you. So I don't know what your experiences are. I don't know everything. I don't know everyone's experiences. So it's funny how suddenly people become experts on color theory and undertones when you call yourself light skinned. Then they want to start examining you. They want to take pictures of you during all 4 seasons of the year. They want to see you with makeup, without makeup, with your natural hair, without your natural hair. They want to see you, pictures of your parents and stuff. And it's like, why are we going through all of these mental gymnastics just because someone called themselves light skinned? Skin tone is subjective at the end of the day. So I have my opinions on what I believe light skin is, and I talked about it in my What Color is Light Skin video, and I'll probably make a part 2 to that. But my theory is that when people get mad over you calling yourself light skin, they're not mad because you're not light skinned. They're mad because they believe that you are associating yourself with a higher form of status than them, because in their mind, being light skinned makes you prettier or it makes you higher status. And so that's why they get pissed off. It's because they feel like, oh no, how dare you call yourself, it's like calling yourself a bad bitch or something. They're like, oh no, how dare you call yourself that? And the only reason that somebody would get mad about that is because, like I said, they have an inferiority complex. And by you calling out your skin tone name, that's like fighting words to them. That's like you basically saying, I'm better than you. That's how they take it, because in their mind, they feel inferior to you. But for example, with me, if a white girl who is lighter than me, technically, if she says, oh, I'm very pale, if let's say she looks like Taylor Swift and she says, yeah, I have porcelain skin, like I'm super pale, I'm super light, like, oh, look at my porcelain skin, my skin looks like porcelain glass, like I'm a porcelain baddie or something. I don't get triggered by that. I don't get mad. Or if a white girl says, I have blonde hair and blue eyes, I'm so cute, blah, blah, blah. I don't get mad about that because That's her life. It's her body. It's her experience. If that's how she looks, that's fine. Her having blonde hair and blue eyes and white skin, that doesn't take away from my beauty as someone who is darker than her and has darker features and a bigger nose and bigger lips. I don't have an inferiority complex about my features in comparison to whiteness. But a lot of unambiguous monoracial black women who do not love themselves have an inferiority complex about their complexion and their nose and their lips and stuff in comparison to a lighter skinned woman. And once again, this is all based on the male gaze. And this is why I talk about decentering men, because if you decenter men, then you no longer care about, who men are looking at or whatever. Like for me, sometimes guys will try to come on my channel and troll and be like, oh, well, the only reason MLS women are above black women is because you're closer to whiteness and like white girls are truly at the top. Am I supposed to be triggered by that? Like, I don't get mad, because if that guy who's commenting, if he views white women as being at the top, that's fine. He should go talk to those white women. Why is he even on my channel? You know what I mean? So why would I want a guy who views me as second best or as like trash in comparison to another group of women? Like, no, there are millions of white women that you could go and get with. So go get one. And a lot of them do. They'll go get a 500-pound obese white woman who looks like a refrigerator, and that's fine. Go do that and be happy. I don't allow other people's anti-blackness to cause me to have an inferiority complex about my own blackness. And I don't allow girls celebrating their whiteness or their non-blackness. I don't allow that to make me feel inferior either, because that's what she is. Are you telling me that white women should be insecure now because, it's going to make me feel insecure because of my blackness? Like, no. People cannot help how they were born. So if she was born with blonde hair and blue eyes and she's white, then she has a right to celebrate her own body. So, but guess what? The same thing goes for someone like Sanaa Lathan. If she was born and she was always called red bone, light skin, etc., then she has a right to call herself that if she feels comfortable calling herself that. She has a right to rep that if that's what she wants to rep. And that's it. She doesn't have to give a fuck about what anybody says. And the same goes for people like Chloe Bailey. I remember how some people on the Black Women Empowerment channels, they were trying to argue and say Chloe and Halle were not light-skinned, that they are unambiguous, brown-skinned black women. If the average black woman looked like Chloe and Halle Bailey, first of all, there would not even be a conversation, because every single black woman would have pretty privilege, like Chloe and Halle Bailey. So for me personally, the way I determine what's light skin is it's not based on whiteness. But it's funny how when you're talking to the average monocultural unambiguous person, so their standards for blackness are based on other black people, right? And their standards for whiteness are based on other white people. So you're white if you look like other white people. You're black if you look like the average black person. But suddenly, if you are lighter skin or mixed race, suddenly the standard becomes whiteness. And that doesn't make any sense, because if you're a light-skinned black person, you're not going to look like a white person unless you're white passing. So why is it that there is no standard, or they constantly move the goalposts for like, what is a mixed person? What is a lighter skinned person? Oh no, you have to pass the paper bag test. Well, I thought that you guys were against colorism. So why are you still upholding the paper bag test, number one? And also, I know that they deep down inside, they'll try to pick and choose with the paper bag test, because they will, in real life, they will accuse people of benefiting from colorism who do not pass the quote unquote paper bag test. I've seen black people call others light skin all the time who are much darker than a paper bag. So to be honest, I can see why someone like Meg Thee Stallion would say I'm a red bone or whatever, because I personally in my own life, and when I went to an HBCU, I told you the story about how people all the way to Chili's color were being called light skin. Or when it comes to men, I've seen rappers like The Game who are in Meg Thee Stallion's color range. I've seen people like that being called light skin. So I can see how she would be called that. Now, I'm not saying like she should call herself that or whatever, because I don't really care, honestly. I don't police other people's identities. I don't care who calls themselves what, to be completely honest. Check out my What Color is Light Skin video if you want to see my personal opinion on what's light skin and what's not. But why is it that everybody else gets to determine their own skin complexion except for light-skinned people? Have you ever noticed that? If a person's dark-skinned, nobody argues back and forth, no one cares. They get to call themselves whatever nickname they want. If a person's white, they can call themselves white, porcelain, pale, pasty, whatever. Nobody cares. But suddenly, if you are in that desirable skin tone range in their opinion, then there's an argument because they associate status with that skin tone. So then that's when they feel like, oh no, that's not fair. Like, I have to be the judge of whether or not you're light skinned. I have to be the judge of whether or not you're pretty. But you don't realize that by arguing back and forth with a light skin, you are actually bestowing light skin privilege on them. You know why? Because having people argue back and forth about your skin tone is actually a common trauma that light-skinned people go through. But because we've never created a space to talk about this common trauma, a lot of monoracials think that it's not a common thing. That's very common. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard of a light-skinned person who has not had people go back and forth about their skin tone unless they were white passing. So that's why I say that if someone says you're not that light-skinned, all they mean is, number one, you're not that pretty. They're just trying to humble you. And then number two, what they mean is you are not white passing. So once again, they are associating beauty with whiteness and they're saying that you don't measure up. So that's why I just pay those people dust, because those people are clearly anti-black and trying to use anti-blackness against you. So they're just projecting their internalized anti-blackness. Anyway, have you ever had people argue about your skin tone or try to police what you can and can't call yourself? How do you determine what your own personal skin tone is? Is it based on other people's opinions of you? Is it based on what your experiences are and what your traumas are? Is it based on what they say at the makeup counter? Is it based on how you look in certain clothing? Do you personally uphold the paper bag test? I personally don't, because like I said, I feel like too many people have been called light skinned that technically do not look like a quote unquote paper bag. And this is because a lot of monoracials are waking up and saying, hey, wait a minute, people who look like Halsey or Meghan Markle, they are not indicative and representative of what true blackness is. So those people are being pushed out of the black community completely. So that creates a new standard of what quote unquote light skinned is. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.